Good evening, everyone. Greetings from the Institute of Global Professionals IGP Bangladesh. Greetings from the Institute of Global Professionals IGP Bangladesh. Thank you all for joining us and staying with us till the end. Honorable knowledge seekers, today I am your host for the evening. My name is Aritra Washak and I am from Bangladesh. Dear knowledge seekers, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. IGP is a social ISO certified international training institute. In last 3 years, we already served 3 million knowledge seekers from 100 plus countries. IGP is internationally recognized and globally accredited. We are contacted to more than 250 plus and 4,500 plus organizations. Institute of Global Professionals IGP is the training faculty for skill development which was founded in 2020 and is generating competent candidates to meet demand in the global labor market by providing professionals qualifications. The Institute of Global Professionals is an institute that provides social work globally recognized and reputable. We serve students and community resource providing holistic social work and education. We believe that it's not effective to increase one skill just by acquiring formal education. So we provide effective training and consulting to generate proficient generation all over the world. We distribute our locally, nationally, and internationally to students, job seekers, job holders, and also for learners through respective campus location and distance learning platform. We are an occupational and dependable institution. IGP is one of the most famous online institute from all over the world. Our vision is education is not a business product. It's a part of our human rights. Based on our vision, we are trying to all reach all corners to the world for free webinars, seminars, courses, award, quiz competition, mentoring, and counseling, etc. On the other side, we also try and serve more than 100 plus premium service for free like creates own portfolio website, resume builder, cover letter, motivation letter, and world knowledge platform for gathering general knowledge which can upgrade all day. Kids learning games, websites, free courses, convert sites, and many more. We help to empower youth to learn to meet their expectations and dreams and become highly skilled people. We implement several training programs, webinars, offline online courses for youth and learners by professionals, trainers, speakers, and coaches. Our session and conducted by globally renowned professionals to develop all kinds of youth and to promote the education of their abilities and personalities. To ensure excellent and in-depth we arranged with qualified trainers, speakers, and instructors. We extended free service to more than 3 million knowledge seekers in the last year. We have affiliations with universities and organizations in 70 different countries. Virtual mouse signing with many colleges and organizations have been accomplished. We are working to create a legendary generation of future scholars and citizens who will be accountable. We are constantly prepared to assist all knowledge seekers with valuable service. Spreading knowledge is crucial for the Institute of Global Professionals. We believe that knowledge is life, light, and vision. We are trying to understand the need of today's generation and will serve them with good research and practice method. We must have a genuine concern for a learners. We represent diversity, growth, and innovation and required to lead a session with personalism, passion, and integrity. IGB members are committed to offering effective, best quality service and continual improvement so that individuals who seek information can improve their skill levels and values. Before we move to the next, let me remind, don't forget to share, tag, and mention your friend in the comment box. Your support is very valuable us. Thank you. Before we move to the next, let me remind, don't forget to share, tag, and mention your friend in the comment box. Your support is valuable to us. Thank you. Moving to the next. With your continuous support, we already completed 1265 webinars successfully. Wow. Moving to the next. With your continuous support, we already completed 1265 webinars successfully. Wow. Are going to start our 1266 program. Name is Cost of Capital. And our today's speaker, Dr. Babita Jha in India, from India. Before I hand over the stage to ma'am, want to share very little bit about our speaker. She is an associate professor, School of Business Management, just demerits to be University, Delhi NCR. Now, very important moment for me to invite our speaker, IGP, with her presentation. Now, very important moment for me to invite our speaker to IGP with her presentation. Hello, ma'am.
Good evening. Hello, sir.
Good evening,
Hello.
ma'am. Hope you are doing
Hello
great.
to all my viewers. Nice to be back in this session.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, on behalf of IGP Knowledge Seekers, want to hear from you about you, ma'am.
Uh, this is really a good experience for me, like speaking in front of so many viewers. And really, I must appreciate that so many sessions have been conducted by your group, and so many students and scholars and other listeners they are participating in this thing. It's really a commendable task. Thank you for making me a member of this particular professional group. Thank you.
Ma'am, now stage
Should I
is
start?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So my topic of today's session it will be cost of capital. So as you all know, cost of capital it is very important for any organization to determine because again cost is being associated whenever we are going for any sourcing of capital. So usually we think cost it is in terms of running of business. Okay, so like we think it in terms of fixed cost or we think in terms of variable cost which are being incurred in a business for day to day requirement. But like most of you might not be aware that whenever we are going for any sourcing of capital, by capital I mean to say sources of finance, so there is a cost associated whenever we are sourcing capital from different sources. So that cost it is being known as cost of capital, and it is actually the minimum rate of return. Like whenever we go for sourcing of any capital, we have to incur certain type of cost, and by cost I mean to say, if I am going for debt capital, I am required to pay interest amount as well as the principal amount at the end of the repayment period. Similarly, if I am going for sourcing of share capital, I am required to pay dividend to my shareholders, and whatever their expectation it is in terms of dividend, I am required to pay it. So that becomes the cost of a particular company. So again, cost of capital it is the minimum rate of return or a minimum rate of profit which a company must earn, because if they want to generate value to the shareholders, to the stakeholders, they should be earning at least this minimum rate of return. Because again, cost of capital I told you it is the cost of sourcing finance through different sources. So if you are incurring cost in relation to different sources of finance, naturally your return it should be above that particular sources of finance, because you are required to earn profit, also you are required to pay back to your shareholders by way of dividend, you are required to give your debenture holder by way of interest. So until or unless if you are not able to generate earnings or profit above your cost of capital, you won't be able to run your business in a satisfactory manner. So cost of capital, it has become a very important word nowadays. So again, you should remember this, this is also termed as a hurdle rate. Hurdle means like this is the rate a company must be earning, and beyond this rate, if a company goes, okay, that is an extra earnings for the company, but at least this is the minimum rate which a company should earn. So suppose if I am purchasing a new equipment by taking finance from different sources of finance, and I say my cost of capital, okay, from equity, and then I add on to debt, so my cost of capital, it is around 10%. So I should be at least having the hurdle rate of 10% from my business, because again, if I'm not earning 10% interest, 10% rate of return from my business, I won't be able to pay back to my equity shareholders by way of dividend. I may not be able to pay to my debenture holders the interest amount which they are eligible to get after each and every like in a regular month period. So I must be having this much amount of return, or the hurdle rate or the minimum rate of return, so that I can run my business very smoothly. Now, when I talk about this cost of capital, or whenever a person talks about the cost of capital, this cost of capital takes into consideration three factors. So, suppose if I say, if I am paying interest to the other party, so if you are paying interest to the other party, and if other party is investing in the debentures of your company, they will basically demand at least the zero risk return. That means zero risk return means the return which they would have got if they are investing in some risk free security. Okay, so that means if they are investing in some government bonds or government related securities, and they are getting that return, it is termed as risk free return, or that return, it is termed as zero risk return. So at least the investor who is investing in your business by way of purchasing of debentures, by way of purchasing bonds, they should be at least getting a risk free rate of return. So, this is termed as the first factor for determining the cost of capital. So, suppose if I talk in terms of dividend, again, a shareholder will at least demand the risk free rate of return. That means he will say, at least if suppose I would have not invested in the shares of this company, I would have invested this amount in some government bonds or in some government securities. At least this risk free rate of return I would have earned. So I am demanding from the shares that I should be getting this much amount of risk free rate of return. So again, zero risk return, it is a very important component for determining your cost of capital. Then comes, of course, whenever any investor, if they are investing in your business, okay, they will be demanding premium for the business risk which they are taking. Now, some of you may be thinking, what is business risk? Business risk, it is being associated because you are required to pay dividend. Okay, sorry, because you are required to pay interest to the other party, and on the basis, or you are required to pay dividend to the other party on the basis of earnings which you are having. So suppose if you are not able to generate, okay, good amount of earnings, okay, or we call it in terms of EBIT, that is earning before interest and taxes, you won't be able to pay a good return to the investors. So again, whosoever are your investors, they will at least be demanding the premium for the business risk which they are also taking. Okay, as an owner, don't think that you are only facing this business risk, but the persons who are investing in your business, they are also indirectly being affected by the business which you are running. Because if you are having loss, again, there are shareholders who are in your company, they may also have loss because you are having loss. Similarly, in case of financial risk, if you are facing, so financial risk, it occurs because of the amount of borrowing which your company is taking, or which any corporate is taking. So if higher the borrowings are there, so it is said that company it is on a higher risk. Okay, so again, whatever financial risk they are taking because they are investing in your business, they are paid premium for that thing. So please remember, my dear viewers, that this cost of capital any company incurs because because the investors, they can be shareholders or they can be lenders or they can be the debenture holders or debt holders. This cost of capital, it includes the zero risk return, that is the risk free return, plus whatever business risk a particular business is facing or a company is facing, plus whatever financial risk a company is facing. So you are required, as a company, as a business, as a corporate, you are required to give them at least this much amount of return. So these are the factors which will be affecting your cost of capital. Now, before going further, I would like to tell like some of the major sources of finance. So, when we talk about major sources of finance, we basically refer to equity. So, equity again, it's an owner's capital, and owners, they always demand dividend from a company, and because of this dividend, okay, again the second demand which arises, it is in terms of capital appreciation. But in terms of company, if we talk companies, they are required to pay dividend. Okay, like if in case of profit, or suppose if there, even if there is no profit, okay, sometime dividend or shareholders, they may say companies, they are not earning profit, they are not giving dividend. So so we were expecting dividend from this company, so why we should be investing in this company. Okay, so naturally shareholders, they will be demanding from the company. I'm not talking about from the perspective of the market, the dividend amount. Secondly, companies, when they are borrowing capital by way of this thing, financial borrowings, that means by way of debentures, by way of loan capital. So investors, they are expecting their return in terms of interest and the principal repayment. So again, this becomes the cost for the company. Why it becomes the cost? Because company, since they are borrowing capital, they are required to pay this thing, this amount of interest, or they are required to pay the amount of principal repayment. So again, it becomes a component of the cost of capital. Now some companies may be having preference shareholders also. So as you might be knowing, preference shares, they are the hybrid form of capital, like which is a mix of equity plus a mix of debt. So again, preference shareholders, their basic demand, it is in terms of fixed rate of preference dividend, as well as at the time of redemption, redeemable preference shares, they demand fixed payment of the whatever amount they have invested. So it is very important that companies, they give these type of shareholders the amount of dividend which company has promised to give, or the fixed rate which company has promised to give, as well as the principal repayment, or as well as the amount which they have invested at the time of purchasing of preference share. So again, it becomes the expectation of the investors. This expectation, it is the cost for the company. Why? Because company will be required to pay dividend to these type of shareholders. So so we have equity as a source of financing, we have this thing, debentures, or the debts which we say, this is a source of financing, or the preference shares, the hybrid security, which again is a source of financing. Now these all carry a cost in some way or the other. I told you, by way of dividend, equity, by way of interest in case of borrowed funds, by way of dividend again in case of preference shares. So now you may be surprised to know, even retained earnings, they carry certain type of cost. Okay, because retained earning is the portion which is being retained by the company, so that the company may use it for further expansion of a further project. But there is certain emotions being attached by the shareholders with these retained earnings. Shareholders, they think if companies, they are retaining their earnings, okay, that will be helping them in improving their dividend, or that will be helping them in further getting their returns more enhanced. So thing is that again shareholders expectation it is there with retained earnings. So cost of retained earning it will be equal to cost of equity only. So please be aware of these four components, that is equity, preference shares, debt and retained earnings. Okay, these are the components of any company's capital structure, and they become cost of capital in some way or the other. So, let me tell you about the importance of cost of capital. Now, whenever company is designing its capital structure, so again, I told capital structure, it simply means the different components of capital they have taken or the different sources of finance in the capital. It is termed as capital structure. Okay, so like equity, preference, debt, and retained earnings, they are the sources of different sources of finance. So whenever company is designing its capital structure, it basically takes into consideration the cost associated with each capital sources. Okay. Now, what is the basic motive of this to take this thing into consideration? Just to minimize the cost of capital, because every company will like to minimize their cost of capital so that they can have good amount of returns. So the main aim is to minimize their cost of capital. So capital structuring will be done in such a manner that the amount of this thing cost of capital or the rate of cost of capital it goes down. Okay, then capital budgeting decisions again take into consideration the cost of capital. Now, some of you may be curious to know what is capital budgeting decisions. Capital budgeting decision simply means long term investment decisions. So, if suppose I want to finance a project of rupees 10 crores, so I would be rather interested in knowing whether this capital, whatever I am going for a finance, okay, or whatever amount I am investing, like by way of investment, whether I will be able to get good returns on this capital or not. Okay, or whether my net present value okay it will be sufficient so that I may have good amount of revenue generation in the coming future. So again, please keep in this mind, whenever capital budgeting decision it is being taken in any corporate, they take the significance of cost of capital. Now you may say, how does cost of capital will play a significant role in capital budgeting decision? There is one technique which is known as net present value technique. It takes into account the cost of capital as its discounting factor. So whenever we are going for capital budgeting decision, and that too with the discounting technique, we take a discounting factor into account. And in case of net present value, we take cost of capital or weighted average cost of capital as our discounting factor. So please do remember, whenever any cash flows they are being taken into account in case of net present value method, we discount it with the help of cost of capital. So again, cost of capital will play a significant role in knowing or in understanding whether a project should be accepted or it should be rejected. Then comes the importance in terms of comparative study of different sources of financing. So, suppose if I say I have a debt capital in my sources of financing, okay, and debt capital it is cheaper in comparison to my equity. So, I would like to take more of debt capital. So, I can go for a comparative study. I suppose I say equity it is costing me around 12%. Okay, since I have to pay dividend to my equity shareholder, I am taking that dividend into account, and I'm saying 12% I have to pay back to my equity shareholders, whereas to my debenture holders I have to pay only 10% as a cost of capital. So naturally I will be preferring debt capital. Okay, so again, it's not so key only on the basis of percentage we will be able to determine this factor. There are several other linked factor which I'll be dealing in my further slides, but please to remember which I will be comparing each sources of finance by way of cost which I will be incurring on each sources of finance, and then I will be see which is the cheaper and which is the better source of financing is there, because my main motive is to minimize the cost of capital as far as possible. Now, next comes evaluations of financial performance. So, at the end, when we are evaluating our financial performance, again, we see it by terms of cost of capital. Okay, so suppose if I say my ROI it is 12%, okay, that means whatever I have invested, I have generated the returns of 12%, and my cost of capital it is only 10%. So, I should be happy. Why? Because my return it is 12% and cost which I am incurring it is only 10%. So 2% I am having by way of surplus in comparison to my cost of capital. So that is a happy moment for any company. But suppose if I say my ROI it is only 8% and my cost of capital it is 10%, then this may be a cause of worry to the corporates. Why? Because 10% is your cost of capital. That means you are incurring cost of 10%, whereas your return you are only having 8%. So it's not a good deal, okay, or it's not a good profitable business. So again, evaluations can be done on the basis of cost. Please remember, cost it is very tricky term. Okay, so cost, again, whenever I use cost, that means it's an expense. Okay, so again, if cost if I'm using for business, expense by way of fixed and variable. If I'm using in terms of capital, I mean to say by way of dividend, by way of interest, by way of other forms. Okay, so that becomes a cost. So cost, it should be any type of cost. Okay, we should be handling it very rationally. Then comes financing and dividend decisions. So if we, again, I told you, this cost of capital it plays a very important role whenever you are going for financing of any business. Even suppose you may be building your own house. Okay, so in terms of your houses, you may be saying I would be rather happy to invest more amount of my own capital, because if I take loan from banks, I will have to pay interest to my bankers. Okay, so that becomes a cost for me. So that interest, again, it is taken into consideration by the company when they are financing any of their project. Similarly, the owner's capital also it becomes cost, because company has to pay dividend. So financing decisions, they are basically based on the cost of capital. Then you may say how dividend decisions can be based. Again, please do keep this in mind. Whenever I am investing in shares of any company, I may be having something in my mind about the dividend also, which this company will be paying. So, dividend apart, I know capital gain, it is the main motive of most of the shareholders. But when we look at from the perspective of the company's performance, we see it from the perspective of dividend, which this company may be able to pay in the coming future or not. So, again, dividend decisions they become the criteria, or they become a significant factor, okay, for this cost of capital. So this is the importance of cost of capital. It can be in terms of capital structuring, financing, dividend decision making, or if we want to see our own financial performance. So now, when I was talking about this cost of capital, okay, I told you we will be taking into consideration different components, that is equity, debt, preference shares, and retained earnings. But usually, when we calculate cost of capital, we take basically two of the major components nowadays, that is cost of debt and cost of equity. Companies who are having preference shares, they take preference shares also into account, but generally we talk about cost of capital with reference to two factors, that is debt and equity. So debt it is a borrowed fund, equity it is the owner's capital. So whenever we are talking about the determination of cost of capital, we will be talking it in terms of weighted average cost of capital. Now this may be a new term for many of you. Now please do remember one thing: whenever company is raising finance from different sources of finance, it does not raise all the finance by same proportion. It may have 60% of equity capital and it may have 40% of debt capital. Similarly, it can think of having 40% of debt capital and 60% of equity capital. So, whenever you are trying to compute the overall cost of capital, because please let me tell you one thing, I don't mean to, whenever we are talking in terms of cost of capital, we, apart from talking in terms of specific cost of capital or specific component cost of capital, we are also interested in knowing the overall cost of capital. That means cost of capital, if we add on all the things, that is cost of debt plus cost of equity plus cost of preference if you are having any, if a company has retained earnings plus cost of retained earnings, we will be adding all these things and we will be taking into account overall cost of capital. Now, please do remember one thing, whenever we are adding these things, we are also keeping into mind the proportion of capital being raised, that means 50%, 60% from different sources of finance, and then only we compute our weighted average cost of capital. Okay, so please do remember, weighted average cost of capital simply means the proportion of source of finance multiplied by the specific component cost. So let me be very clear. If I am having 50% of equity in as a source of finance, and if I am incurring 10% cost on that equity, so 50 multiplied by 0.10, it will give me how much? 50, just do it, 50 into 10% divided by 100, that is 5% as my cost of equity. Similarly, again, if I am having 50% of debt of capital and 9% of this thing, that is my cost of debt, so I will be having 9 multiplied by 50%, so 4.5% will be my cost of debt. So 4.5 plus 5%, that is 9.5%, that will become my overall cost of capital. So please do remember, weight of a particular component multiplied by cost of that specific component, it will give you a particular cost. Okay, so that if we add on all the sources, if we add on all the cost of capital, that will become weighted average cost of capital. Okay, so I hope this is clear. And in finance, whenever we are representing this word, we mean to say it, we represent it by the word of K naught, that is weighted average cost of capital. Now, I told you, I talked about debt. So, debentures, I told you it carries interest rate. That means interest becomes the cost of a particular company, be it a loan, be it credit cards, or be it invoice financing. So, interest becomes a cost. Now, cost of debt, it basically refers to the interest, but you please be aware of this thing. Interest, they are usually, in most of the countries, they are tax free. So again, in case of corporate, if taxes are there, you can deduct whatever cost of debt you have incurred, one minus tax rate, and that becomes an important component in terms of your cost of capital. Cost of company, it means the rate of return which a company has to pay to its equity shareholders. So please keep this thing in mind. Whenever market goes up and down, the expectations of the investors, it will go up and down. It can be by way of capital appreciation or it can be by way of dividend growth. So again, if we are talking specifically in terms of dividend, it becomes the cost of equity investors' expectation, and it becomes the cost of equity for the company. Okay, the expectations of the investors, they basically becomes the cost for a particular company. So if I represent this figure, uh, so this is the weighted average cost of capital, how I can compute it. Cost of equity, then I have taken cost of debt into account. So whatever, when we are computing cost of equity, we look how to compute it, and just pay attention on this thing. We look into this thing, that is equity risk premium multiplied by beta. So now what is equity risk premium? Whatever whatever market rate of your security or rate of return which your security is giving by way of market, minus whatever risk free rate if you had invested this amount in debt, in other type of risk free securities. Okay, so if you will minus that amount, suppose this security it is giving me market rate of return 12%, government security it is giving me 7% at rate of interest. So 12 minus 7%, it will be 5%. So this will become equity risk premium. That means 5% is my premium which I am earning because I am investing in the equity capital. Okay, so beta, if I multiply it by beta, so beta it is a measure of the market systematic risk. So in a market, a systematic risk means market prevailing risk. So suppose beta, if I say it is of 1, I mean to say if market goes up by 1%, okay, my security growth will also be linked with 1%. If market goes down by 1%, again my security will fluctuate by 1%. So beta, whenever any investor is investing in any of the security, they take beta as the major consideration for investing in any of the security, because again all the security they are subjected to systematic risk. So this particular cost of equity, this is termed as a CAPM model. So this model basically takes into consideration beta multiplied by equity risk premium plus whatever risk free rate which an investor should be having. So suppose if I say government is declaring 7% risk free rate plus, okay, beta it is 1%, equity risk premium it is 5%. So 7 plus 5%, I will be saying at least my equity investors they are demanding 12% return from me. So again I'm repeating, if I'm saying risk free rate of 7%, I say my equity risk premium it is 5%, beta I'm saying it is 1. Okay, so 5 into 1 will give me 5. So then 7% plus 5%, it will give me 12%. That means my cost of equity will be 12%. Then comes my cost of debt. Cost of debt, please to remember whatever interest, okay, suppose I am willing to give as a company 7% rate of interest to my debt holders. So 7% it becomes the average yield on my debt. That means I am required to pay 7% to my this thing, the venture holders or debt holders. Now if I am getting any tax benefit, let's suppose I am getting a benefit of 40%. So 7%, if I'll exclude 40%, okay, so that means only 60% I am required to pay by way of interest. How come? Because 70 because sorry only if I'm saying 40% it is here, that means I'm paying I'm able to say 40% as my tax rate, whereas 60% only I'm required to pay from my own pocket, because at least I'm able to save my tax because of 60%. So how much I'll be paying, how much actual amount I'm paying? 70 7% multiplied by 40. Okay, so this is the amount I'm actually paying to my debt holders, because other amount I'm saving by way of tax. Okay, because I'm not paying to the government, at least this much amount is saved, though I am paying the entire amount of interest rate. Thing is that if I talk in terms of my internal cost, I am actually bearing the remaining 40% of my interest. So this is cost of debt. Now if we multiply it by the proportion of equity by the proportion of debt which I have taken, that becomes the weighted average cost of capital. Okay, so please keep in mind, we basically take all the components into account while computing cost of capital. We take proportion of each sources into account. We add on all the item, and then then it becomes weighted average cost of capital. Please do remember one thing, weighted will always imply the value which a particular weights they will be always taking into consideration the value of different components which are there in your balance sheet. Okay, so suppose if I say I am raising 60 lakhs, 60 millions, okay, through this thing, that is through equity shares. So 60 million will become 60 millions will become my equity component value. Similarly, if I'm saying 40 millions, I'm raising it from debt, 40 millions will become my value of debentures. Okay, so 60 plus 40, that will become 10 millions for a particular company as the overall capital. Now, if 60 divided by 10 million, so it will give me 60% as equity. 40 divided by 10, it will give me this thing, that is 40 divided by 10, so 40%. So please to remember, 60 is 60 millions if I'm talking. So 60 millions, this is the value of equity. 40 million if I'm saying, so this will be the value of my debt. If I add on both the values, it will become the capital value. And this component divided by the total capital value, that will give you the proportion. Please remember of weights. Okay, so weights, they play a very important role while determining weighted average cost of capital. Now, some of you, now this is the example of the automobile companies. As you can see, Porsche Automobile, they are having 9.5% as the weighted average cost of capital. Then others, Mercedes, it is having 12%. Nissan, they are having 13%. Now, you may be saying, "Ki, why so much of difference?" So please to remember one thing. Some companies, they try to raise more amount by way of debt capital. Some companies, they try to raise more amount by way of equity capital. Now, you may say, "Ki, why this preference for debt and capital?" Usually it is said like debts, they are less risky capital. Okay, so usually investors, they demand less rate of return because less risk, less rate of return. And even I told you like interest, it is usually in most of the companies they are tax free. So again, interest, this tax saves certain amount of interest. So debt capital in somehow or the other way, it becomes the cheaper component as a source of financing. But if you're raising finance through equity capital, please do remember one thing: equity capital, they are the risky capital for any company. So if you are raising by way of equity capital, your sourcing of finance or your cost of capital goes up. Why? Because higher the risk, more demand will be in terms of return. So your expectations of the shareholder, they will go up, so their expectation will in fact become cost for you. So equity, it is said to be the dearest component in terms of cost of capital. Why? Because it is very expensive, because equity investors, they at least demand 10, 12, 14%. So if you are increasing the amount of equity, the cost of capital will go down. Now please to remember one thing. Now you may say, then it's better to go with debt financing because debt, it is a cheaper source of financing. Now please to remember one thing: if a company is taking more amount of debt in their capital structuring, it may lead like they may face the problem of insolvency in the coming future. Because if company is not able to generate a good amount of net profit, they might not be able to pay back the interest amount, to give back the principal amount. In that case, they may be declared insolvent, and that may prove to be a risky point for any company. So it's not always advisable that company should go for higher leverage amount. Okay, up to an optimum level it is advisable, but beyond that level it is not advisable for any company for a particular amount of leverage. Because please to remember, though debt capital, they are the cheaper source of finance, but risk is definitely associated with it in terms of business risk. And if business, it is not able to repay the interest or principal amount, company may have to wind up. So equity, so companies usually prefer to keep certain amount of equity component. Please to remember, there should be an optimal mix of this thing, equity and debt, so that the cost of capital can be minimized. So that is the basic factor. Now you may say over here, if you look into this figure, you may say, oh God, 16.3, it is for General Motor Company. But it may happen that General Motor Companies may have raised a more amount of equity capital, more amount of debt capital, and accordingly, their cost of capital might have gone up. The other reason may be that their equity component may be more in comparison to debt component, because some of the companies, they fear keeping too much amount of debt capital in their company. So they take this thing into consideration, that we raise an equal amount by equity capital also. Okay, because equity, their expectation, it is in terms of dividend, and company, if they don't pay dividend, then also they, like equity shareholders can't declare them as insolvent, because again it depends on the discretion of any company whether they like to pay dividend or not. Okay, so so please remember one thing. Your If you are investing in any company, please go through their cost of capital, please go through their return of investment, and then you can see whether the performance of the company, it is good or not. Because if you are able to compare it with ROI, then you can see, yeah, this is a good company for investment also. Why? Because their cost of capital, it is lesser in comparison to the returns which this company is earning. Okay, so whenever you are going next time, whenever you are looking to the balance sheet of any company, please go with the components of the capital which they are having in their balance sheet. Please go with the cost which are being associated with different capital, and then see what is the cost of capital, or the overall cost of capital of that particular company. So this was all from my side in terms of cost of capital. So any doubts, any questions which you would like to raise from this cost of capital? This is actually a very detailed topic, but within 1 hour, I found it difficult to cover. So maybe in detail, I'll be dealing in my next session in terms of cost of debt, in terms of cost of equity, in terms of other components. I'll take some numericals also. But since a brief introduction of cost of capital, I want to give you over here. So anything, any comments? Hello, hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Are you audible?
Yeah.
Ma'am, yours complete?
Yes, sir. I've completed with the webinar. I would like, if there is any queries, I'd like to handle them.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm happy to see so many participants.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your rich content presentation, which can impact our knowledge seekers surely. After your
Thank you.
presentation, I hope our knowledge seekers can learn something new.
But
But
any
our
questions? I
only
just
intention,
wanted.
learn and better I be knowledge seekers. Ma'am, good.
Okay.
Once again, thank you so much, ma'am, for your presentation. Now, ma'am, it's time for our question answer session, which is the one more valuable part of our regular webinar. Honorable ma'am, will be back in our session part. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, dear IGP knowledge seekers, please ask your question in the comment box as much as you want to know from our speaker. Thank you. After question answer, we have progress certification and online quiz competition. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, please ask your question in the comment box as much as you want to know from our speakers. Thank you. After question answer, we have progress certification and online quiz competition. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, please ask your question in the comment box as much as you want to know from our speaker. Thank you. After question answer, we have webinar certification and online quiz competition.
Hello, there is one
Once
question I
again,
can see, sir. There is one question, sir. Uh, Someone is asking what is an implicit cost of increasing proportion of debt of a company. So if we are increasing proportion of debt in a particular company, it like equity shareholders may take it on other way, like okay, their demand in terms of dividend will go. Why? Because they may think that the leverage amount, if a company is in that if a leverage is increasing, that may hinder the this thing the equity performance. Why? Because I told you, higher the leverage, the more riskiness, okay, in terms of financial riskiness a company will be having. So equity shareholders may fear that in case company is not able to perform well, then they may be affected. So naturally they will be demanding like more returns. So this can be the implicit cost, because in terms of equity shareholders, if I am investing in any company by way of equity shareholders, so I will see, oh god, so much of borrowed funds. That means this company, if it gets risky at any point of time, I will be also on risk. So let me ask a more dividend, or let me expect more return from this company. So this is the implicit cost. Thank you, Lutrim, for asking this question.
thank you, ma'am, for your answer.
Okay.
Dear
Any other
IGP
question?
seekers, dear IGP knowledge seekers, please ask your question in the comment box.
I hope I was clear with my thoughts.
Okay, Dilan. I hope you move all you you cover your presentation. So there is no question. Wait, ma'am, some minutes. IGB knowledge seekers, please ask your question in our comment box.
I hope I have answered your question, Mr.
Yes,
Braha.
ma'am. I hope you cover your presentation. That's why there is no
Okay.
question, ma'am.
Okay.
Once again, thank you so much, honorable ma'am. Once again, thank you so much, honorable ma'am, for your time in IGP. We have learned a lot from you with new topics. It will add some value to our day-to-day activity along with our academic and professional growth. Honorable ma'am, hope you to see again with a new topic and a new date. Thank you, ma'am. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice interacting. Thank you, all the participants. Be in touch. So I'm leaving the studio. Thank you, sir.
Honorable ma'am, do you move to the next honorable certification? With the certification process, if you want to leave the studio, you can, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am. No need. IGP knowledge seekers, it's time for the webinar certification process. The most attractive and powerful part of our regular webinar. After a short video, we will start our web. After webinar certification, we have an online quiz competition and quiz certification. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, it's time for the webinar certification process. The most powerful part of our regular webinars. After a short video, we will start our webinar certification. After webinar certification, we have an online quiz competition and quiz certification. Dear IGB knowledge seekers, today our some technical problems we cannot share our certificate code. We provide our certificate code in thank you. Dear IGB knowledge seekers, today our some technical problems we cannot share our certificate code. We provide our certificate codes in a short way. Now online quiz competition. To join the online quiz competition properly, please follow my instruction carefully. Now time for the online quiz competition. To join the online quiz competition properly, please follow my instruction carefully. First of all, you have to go www.slido.com and find it to the quiz and scan this QR code for direct joining. And the code is global IGP. And the code is global IGP. After a short video, we will start our quiz session. Slido with code and the code is global IGP. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, please join in Slido with code. The code is global IGP. Please join with code. The code is global IGP. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, first of all, you have to go www.slido.com and find the quiz or scan this QR code for direct joining, and the code is global IGP. And the code is global IGP. Quiz name from Quiz Slido. So join with your full name, which will be directly printed on quiz certificate. The top will be awarded quiz competition certificate. Already 26 people are joined us. Please join early. Join in Slido with code, and the code is global IG. Let's start. Our first question is, a higher cost of capital will most likely lead to. Our first option is a higher NPV on investment. Our second option is a lower NPV on investment. Our first option is a higher NPV on investment, and second option is a lower NPV on investment. A lower NPV on investment is the right answer. 12% people are right. Our second question is capital of UK. Second question is capital of UK. First option is Spain. Second option is London. First option is Spain. Second option is London. London is the right answer. 93% people are right. Slide to the bottom. Our third question is capital of EEUU. Our first option is Wisdom in DC, and second option is New York. Wisdom in DC is right answer. Our fourth question is any company average cost of capital is the average of. Our first option is cost of share and all sorts of long term funds, and second option is cost of equity shares and debentures. Cost of share and all resource of long-term funds is the right answer. 67% people are right. Our fifth question is capital goods are defined as. First option. Our fifth question is capital goods are defined as. First first option is the money it's take to build money it takes to build a business, and second option is product goods used in the production process. First option is the money it's take to build a business, and second option is products good used in the production process. Products good used in the production process is the right answer. 53% people are right. Our sixth question is which capital is this? Dublin and China. First option is Dublin and second option is China. Our sixth question is which capital is this? First option is Dublin and second option is China. Dublin is the right answer. 79% people are right. Our seventh question is the cost of natural resource is depleted, and second option is ignored to accounting process. Our seventh question is the cost of a natural resource is first option is depleted and second option is ignored for accounting purpose. Depleted is the right answer, 54% people are right. Our eighth question is the cost of an intangible asset is first option is amortize and mm, second option is depreciate. First option is amortize and second option is depreciate. Amortized is the right answer. 48% people are right. Our ninth question is what is opportunity cost? First option is maximal sacrificed alternative to make an economic decisions and second option is buy something cheaper. Maximal sacrificed alternative to make an economic decision is the right answer. 90% people are right. Our next and final question in the section is what is an example of capital? First option is hammer and second option is boss. Hammer is the right answer and 90% people are right. Congratulations, doctor. Congratulations to our webinars online quiz competition winners top 10. Congratulations again. Slido will take a few minutes for finalizing the result and after that we will issue our online quiz competition certificates on our official page and groups. Congratulations to our webinars online quiz competition winners top 10. Congratulations again. Slido will take a few minutes for finalizing the result and after that we will issue our online quiz competition certificates on our official Facebook page and groups and the page name is Institute of Global Professionals. Congratulations to our webinars online quiz competition winners top 10. Congratulations again. Slido will take a few minutes for finalizing the result and after that we will issue our online quiz competition certificates on our official Facebook page and groups. And the page and groups name is Institute of Global Professionals. And at the end moment of our session, we can say properly feed your skill. Never stop learning cause life never stop teaching us. Be happy and stay safe. See you again and again. We want your participation in very in every program. If you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not a people or things. Albert Einstein. Before I say or hit the end live button, again once thanks to all IGP knowledge seekers for your active participation as always. See you in the next session. Thank you.